Hello, this is Pushing Boundaries, a podcast about pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, and unconventional ideas. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas R. Verney. My guest today is Scott Tate, consulting personal trainer and coach based out of Toronto and Chatham-Kent in Ontario. He is the owner of Tate Body Sciences. Scotty, as he likes to be called, works with adults, often dealing with movement disorders or other chronic concerns, such as Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis or other neurodegenerative conditions. He applies kinesiology and sports science principles to develop for each of his clients a personalized body science plan. According to Scotty, quote, "The secret sauce is our deeply human approach to your journey," end of quote. Welcome, Scotty.
That was a good find. Where does that one from?
Oh, I put it together. I read my guests and try to make some comments that sort of bring together the most important points about them. So did I get that fairly right?
It feels like you nailed it. I'd say the other secret sauce is trying to have fun with it all.
Yes.
That's the only thing that I gotta do it better at articulating myself, I think, is the fun and joy of it all.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
I've been coaching professionally at least for about 15 years, maybe a little bit more than that.
You don't
but
look
then
15 years old.
Yeah, I'll be 40. I'll be 41 this year, so it's been a few years. And before that, I was a camp counselor. I was in sports camp, so I was kind of coaching kids and youth before kind of professionally doing it in a kind of a one-on-one sense. So it's been a lifelong thing.
Very interesting. So I guess it has kept you young too, because you look awfully young for 41.
I'll take it. I'll yeah. From an early age, I remember just wanting to be able to be as physically engaged with my kids as possible when I came to be a parent. So that's been kind of the underlying
Yeah.
kind of sticking point for me.
So how did you come to this idea of a personalized plan for people with chronic movement disorders? How did you sort of come upon that? How did you discover it?
Yeah, the route for me was I was very lucky to attend the University of Guelph, and we had incredible cadaver lab. So I had access to seeing full bodies and be able to explore them kind of down to the depths. And so what we do in that lab is you have half of one and then half of another, so you can see some different shapes and sizes. Usually one female and one male, as far as the representative genders are concerned. So we had one very small, petite cadaver that we worked with who had almost no muscle mass. And then another cadaver worker who had a large amount of fat mass. And just seeing the differences, and there was signs of surgeries and signs of kind of physical interventions in their life. So it was just fascinating to see the differences of the lives lived,
Right.
and what that showed up in the body. So it kind of started at that point, and then it's just been, you meet a certain client, you help them out, and they introduce you to someone else, and you help them out, and then you find all of a sudden you're working with a bunch of people with some similar concerns, and then but then they're all individuals, and it just kind of meshed together in that kind of path, I guess.
So what about people, with Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis? Do you need like a different approach to people who suffer of those kinds of chronic disorders?
So what I've found at this point, at least in working with human bodies for 15-ish years, everyone's an individual. So that's the underlying principle. Whether they've got X, Y, and Z, they need to be managed differently because they've got a different history. So one of my people with Parkinson's, they were an avid bike rider, an exerciser, and all kinds of physical literacy and physical skills by the time they got their diagnosis and were ready to start exercising. Very different than someone who never physically engaged in their bodies. So same diagnosis, very different person. So I think the personal is the consistent theme. What I find incredible about Parkinson's specifically, because that was my way into movement disorders, the same thing that's important for all of us is just amplified for that group. It's feeling confident and competent in your body and how it moves. And then you can do all kinds of incredible things. But that confidence and competence. Those are the first things to develop. And then it's just whatever that person can do, not conditions aside, is what can they do, and it changes, but that's the confidence and competence thing is the universal kind of tie that binds. And because of having movement disorder and obvious extra concern of falling and whatever comes with that diagnosis, it just amplifies the importance, but it's the same for everyone.
So how many, excuse me, how many people do you see per week approximately?
I would say there's 10 to 15 people that I see kind of 1 to 2 times a week or 2 or 3 times for some of them. And then there's a few people that I'll see kind of once a month or twice a month, just so they're more confident and independent now. So it's more just about program design and keeping it fresh and interesting for them.
Right.
But for a large part of my clientele currently, at least, it's kind of regular kind of once or twice a week sessions just to keep things as tip top as we can. And because things change, particularly with a degenerative condition, capacity changes on any given day. So just having that confidence and support that they're doing the most that they can do safely on any given day is what drives them.
Do you get referrals from doctors also, or just other sort of clients who have been happy with your work?
It's a mix of both. And most of it is from clients, and they refer in their friends or partners or spouses. But every once in a while, it's their professionals that refer people in. Often, especially with movement disorder specialists, there's not many. So it's a very kind of, at least prior to the pandemic, it was very geographically specific. Like to get into a car, to be mobile enough to get into a car and get to the gym was enough of a barrier. I think now that will likely change as my business grows and I seek to grow it further. It'll be more, I think, accessible that because of all the people know they can do so much from home now, whereas previously, the thought, and my thought too, was that it's better to come into the gym, but I think that's going to change.
So is your gym in Toronto or is it in Chatham?
So the gyms, we have 2 studio spaces in Toronto and kind of the west end of Toronto. But then with the pandemic, we moved our family out to Chatham. So we've got a little home practice there. There's a pool, so we'll do some aquafit and we do a lot of outdoor exercise with my clients in Chatham-Kent until I build a physical establishment. But I'm back in Toronto every couple of weeks to keep the gym and my clients here kind of going and rolling.
And I understand that you publish is it a monthly or a weekly newsletter?
I think I would love to eventually publish it weekly, but right now it's I say monthly-ish, I think is how I describe it at the top of it currently. Yeah, I just brought a nutritionist on board, and my wife's a doctor of naturopathic medicine, so I'm going to start pulling them in for contributing articles, and I would like to expand it to a bit more frequency, but yeah, for now I think it's going to be monthly-ish. And it's good so far. It's well received. I get some lots of good feedback. Every idea for the next one has come from feedback from the previous ones. So I think if I can keep doing it like that, I think it's a good sign.
Yes, I think it's a good sign. I was very impressed by your last one, which was on dopamine, movement, and more, as you called it. Can you tell us a bit about that? What was in that newsletter?
Sure. So that one inspired in part work with my people with Parkinson's, but also my wife's work with her clientele, and just motivation and understanding how your dopamine and your neurotransmitters are an integral part of everything you do is something that I know about, but I don't think it's discussed much. People don't think about what actually drives the movement to happen. They're just like, oh, exercise. But really, like you're making the decision to exercise, and there's an incredible cascade of things coming out of your brain that then makes that muscle contract. And it's phenomenal and beautiful. But it's not really well understood, I think, to the general population. So I just wanted to go into that a little bit more so people can get a bit of an insight into the magic that happens when you decide to contract a muscle. I just find it all very compelling.
As you were talking, I was thinking that so much of scientific and medical work is from top down. Like you were saying, it starts a cascading train of effects from the brain, dopamine, etc., to the muscles. But let's not forget that the muscles also send stimuli back to the brain, right?
Absolutely.
It's also a bottom up, not just a top down system that we have.
And it's beautiful. I recall that from your book. I remember that. I mean, a big part of the reason we're here now is because I reached out to you after reading your book, and it was just bringing it back to how much interplay there is in this whole body.
Exactly.
And I remember struggling not struggling so much, maybe just not being sure how to articulate the unified principle of our, like, your question earlier was like, why individualized, why personalized? Because everything in your whole being is working in concert, let alone in concert with your friends and family and the social connections. So, yeah, bringing it back to the bottom up, or even culturally in and up, there's so much going on when it comes to movement and our behaviors.
Because everything is connected, right?
Yeah, in a beautiful way. And I think that I'm learning and I'm trying to figure out how to articulate that in a way that's motivated and inspiring for people to feel more interconnected with their bodies and with their other people, rather than like an esoteric concept. So I was excited to participate in the podcast for that, the chance to play with that concept.
Right. Now, you mentioned in that newsletter Dr. Ashcroft's seminal work on Parkinson's disease.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So that book it's like anyone that I've worked with Parkinson's, I recommend them they get that book. It's a really great breakdown of the different medicational options, surgical options, deep brain, you're looking at deep brain stimulation, kind of everything up to, I guess it's a few years ago now, but up to a pretty recent date, it's kind of our best understanding of how it progresses, how you get there, what it means. It's a very detailed book. It's not like a 200 page, like it's a tome, but it'll give you really good insight into the disease process and the treatments available. And that one section just really stuck out for me. And I find it that particular story is very compelling. Like, you take these medications, not to so much fight the disease necessarily, but to allow you to physically engage and be in your body and exercise and be active in your life. Like, that's why you take the medication, is to be able to participate. It's not necessarily for the disease. And I found that the way of articulating that was really interesting. And I want to go down that rabbit hole further with other situations and other diseases as well.
I was struck. I think it was either in your newsletter or Dr. Hog. I don't know how people pronounce his name.
I'm not sure either. Yeah.
Call him Eric.
Yeah, there we go.
Anyway, but I was struck by the phrase "pain as a biopsychosocial experience." I thought that's rather interesting.
Yeah, the kinesiologist that I work with primarily, she's my kind of partner in crime. Pain is her real passion. So I learn a lot about kind of pain and deeper dives into pain from her. But that idea of the pain as a biopsychosocial phenomenon dovetails nicely again with your book and my appreciation for our lived experience as something much broader than just the brain or just the muscle. It's a really integrated system that we live in.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful phrase, and you should definitely use it, because it really, I guess, summarizes the whole system in a way. So, was there anything in your own background, in your childhood, in your family constellation, that sort of motivated you, or you think perhaps put you on this course of becoming a sports coach and a personal coach?
1000%. There's always a story in there, and I think yeah, sure. So my father, who just recently passed away, he was a huge advocate for sport and physical activity. So from a very early age, I was given the opportunity to play basketball, to swim, to do things, and lucky enough to be proficient enough at it to feel good and accomplished in it, to push out of it further. But at the same time, I had no great coaching from a skill development side of things. It was, you're good, keep going. It was very much old school, like no pain, no gain. Because you're good, push harder and you'll get better, rather than like get better at skills to get better. It was just go harder to get better. And I broke my kneecap in half when I was 12, and I subsequently I had surgeries in my high school years, and I got to the point where getting into university, maybe could have gotten a partial scholarship somewhere, but literally, and this is another part of the story, my family doctor said to me, "Scott, you're done playing sports unless you want to have a knee replacement at 30." That's literally his actual words to me. So then the disappointment and frustration I had with my body, combined with that, like significant fear from an authority figure, fear of my body, led me to just a really shitty first couple of years in university, lots of pain. I waking up at night in pain. My knees were hurting me so badly. It was pretty miserable, which then forced my hand into looking at other ways to talk to my body and feel better, which led me to chiropractic, led me to naturopathic medicine, led me to massage therapy, and then eventually, luckily, I made it through my first couple of years of university to get into biomechanics and actually get into my program, and then start to learn about how I moved and that there could be a way to improve how I feel based on how I moved. And that was kind of when the lights really lit up and everything came together.
So you went to the University of Guelph, and what did you study there?
Human kinetics was my first degree there. I then returned a few years later after some traveling to study applied human nutrition also, but human kinetics was what really, I think, that and seeing some other professionals and looking at my body for a very different lens, really were the big kickers.
And after that, you became a trainer?
Yeah, I didn't even know, I think I've been in a gym once or twice as a kid. I didn't really know exercise was a thing or personal training was a thing or any of it other than being in physiotherapy. So I went into human kinetics thinking I was going to be a physiotherapist or a sports medicine surgeon because I was expecting to have a knee surgery at 30 and I'd spent years in physio in high school. So but to think that there was a preventing edge, like a leading edge to this whole thing rather than dealing with it after shit happens, pardon my French, was really significant for me. And so I didn't want anyone to go through that kind of type of misery if I could help avoid it. But then it just so happened that the first clients I started working with were actually older adults who'd been through it all and then had picked up a significant diagnosis later. So the intricate problem solving became really compelling for me. And I think that's what ended up not working with youth athletes as much. Now it's kind of a secondary component. But originally it was like a youth athletes because I don't want them to end up like me was kind of where I started when I found out about exercise and training and coaching.
So if you could talk to your 18-year-old today, what would you tell him?
Go to the gym.
Go to the gym. Okay.
Get stronger. Get stronger. Get better.
Fast. Okay.
And then figure out what you want to do. But get stronger, get confident, get better, and then decide. Like I can dunk a ball better now than when I was 16 playing basketball. Like I'm in much better physical shape now. And at 40 than I was at 16, and I was pretty elite at 16. So I mean, yeah.
You mentioned the fact that you are married. Do you have children?
I do. I have 3 kids. Yeah, 8, 5, and 2.
Okay. And how are they doing?
They're fascinating and incredible and challenging and beautiful and miserable to each other some moments and just adorable and sweet to each other. They're all the things. They're all the things.
All of that. Yes. So how did you meet your spouse? You say that she is in a similar profession?
Yeah. So I after finishing my human kinetics degree, I wasn't sure if I was gonna, again, I was just learning about kinesiology and exercise medicine. I didn't really know it was so much of a thing. So I spent a year teaching in Japan. So I was thinking about physical education. I was thinking about youth athletics. So I went there to practice teaching, see what it was like to teach. And I focused on developing some sport initiatives out there. And I had a great time. But I ended up coming back to study applied human nutrition. At the time, I was learning about obviously how important nutrition is to the body and the healing process. So I came back to school to study that specifically, and that's where I met my wife. She was studying in my old program in human kinetics, and we connected in a nutrition class, and yeah, it blossomed from there into something just incredible. Obviously, we're married 15 years later, but yeah, it's been a ride. So we met at school.
That's wonderful. What took you to Japan?
And just my curiosity I wanted to develop my teaching skills, and I wanted to get some work and life experience, and I wanted to see a bit of the world. And Japan had always intrigued me for a country that went from obviously World War II to crazy boom in the 80s to like different, it just got such incredible arc. It just seemed like a fascinating place to explore and people to meet. I'm so glad I did. But yeah.
Where in Japan did you go?
Osaka was my main base. So then from there, we were teaching Nara and Kobe and around that area. And I got a bit to Tokyo, and I got up to Hokkaido for a little bit, but my main base was Osaka. Have you been?
I'm going in October, actually. I will be lecturing and giving workshops.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's an incredible place. Everyone I met there, just wonderful human beings. I have such good memories. I can't wait to take my family there. Yeah.
I look forward to the sushi and the sashimis and all the beef and all that.
Oh, all the things. If you get a chance to cruise around, but there's different regions that have very specific foods that they're kind of popular for and seasonal. So look around in the regions and see what's happening then, and there'll be some gems for sure.
All right. So we talked about your wife a little bit. Does she have a funny story that she tells about you?
She have a funny story. I'm sure she's got a few.
Let's see.
The one she tells the most that she's, I think, proud of is when we first met, she saw me. So I used to come, I was back at school for the second run, so I was taking it seriously. I was in the front row at school. I would just kind of come in, and I was super focused on whatever was happening in lectures. Her and her buddy would sit up in the back a little bit further, and she saw me, and she said to her friends, like, I got to meet this guy. And she, wouldn't normally do that, and she made a point to come down and sit beside me and strike up a conversation. And that's, I mean, had she not done that, I was like laser focused on the class. So that was how we met. And I saw her doing a crossword. This is my half of the story. We met, interacted, and she always had a crossword out. So at one point I said, hey, want to finish that crossword in the cafe? And that was kind of the start of the magic for sure. But yeah, it was her picking me out. I was thinking, there's something interesting about that fellow. I'm gonna go say hi, which was eternally grateful for.
That's a good beginning. Yes, wonderful. Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I was just talking about this with a client of mine, and like the spectrum of that, like I would say I generally more extroverted. By the same token, I love some quiet time. I think we all need some of that. That's what I like being in crowds. I like my happy place. If I'm not feeling happy, is to go play on a couple softball teams or basketball, like out with a group of people having a good time. Could be kids and adults, could be super competitive adults, doesn't matter. Just that atmosphere I love. It's like my medicine. And then by the same token, I can't wait for quiet time. I get to read a book and there's nothing else going on. So I don't know what the actual answer is to your question, but somewhere in the middle, whatever I need.
Are you reading a book at the moment?
Two or three usually on the go, for better or worse.
What are the books that you have on the go?
So right now I'm reading one with the kids. It's a new there's a cartoonist writes some really interesting Star Wars stories. So it's like kids in it's like comic book format. So kids in school, and I think it's the rise or the Return of Star Speeder. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to track it down for you. It's a fun graphic novel for kids. So always one at bedtime. Personally, right now I'm reading like one professional book and then one fiction. So The Boys in the Boat is a fiction that I'm reading now. It's pretty incredible. So it's a true story. It's based on the 1930 the Munich Olympics.
Oh yes.
And the rowing crew from America that made there and challenged the penultimate German team. So it's just that whole story of how that came together, of how kind of Hitler and the Germans planned the specific Olympics to show their strength, and this ragtag group of people that shouldn't be rowing as an elite sport that it was made it through. And so it's incredible recommendation for my clients, and it's a pretty awesome read.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So speaking of happiness, looking back on your life, is there one particular moment that stands out when you were like totally perfectly happy?
I would view your place happy with awe. I experiences of
no, just really like a peak experience, something that stands out. Oh my goodness, that was so wonderful,
seeing and being there for each of my children to be born was just like beautiful and relieving and astounding and incredible. Like those would be peak experiences. And my kids were sequentially there also for the births, and Miles, my oldest, like participated and helped. So the whole thing was just incredible. And so those were three similarly peak experiences.
That sounds nice. That sounds very nice. And would your wife agree with that?
I think once it was done, she would agree with it. There's work in between, obviously, for her, and it was stress. It's anxiety provoking for all of us. But she was an incredible birther. I don't know what to call it with adjective for her, but she was astounding. And just to see her be able to work so hard and then relax and work, just the whole rhythm and flow of it was just astounding. We had midwives. We were lucky to have home births and water births also. So it was pretty incredible, intense, but just we were super lucky that it all worked out really well. So
That's great.
yeah.
Uh, so those are all wonderful experiences. Uh, let's go a little bit into the darker side. Is there anything that you regret? Anything that you have done in your life that you wish you hadn't?
I was just 2 nights ago hanging out with 3 of my friends from high school. One came back from Hong Kong. He's lived there for 15 years. Another just kind of fallen off the radar for 5 years. The other one I see regularly. So the 4 of us are together, and we're just kind of flashing back to things we did in high school. And we wreaked some mayhem. We did some things that were like, looking back now, obviously frustrating or hurtful for people. Like we were minor acts of vandalism, nothing in the grand scheme of things that was terrible, but like things that would have made it hard for those people to clean up or deal with the next day. And that's, it just had no regard for them. Was just what's a fun, fascinating experience for me to do right now, very pleasure seeking and not considering the repercussions. So I regret those in so far as the subsequent work and effort it would have caused other people to repair that stuff. And that wasn't, not a great feeling to think back on that.
What specifically do you regret? Like, what did you do that you wish you hadn't?
She used to take off the tops of sprinkler caps
Yes.
and the lawn sprinklers, so they'd shoot straight vertically instead of kind of doing their nice little thing. We didn't break anything, but we'd make a little bit of a mess, and obviously there was some cleanup to do, and they had to put them back on, and we'd leave them there. So it was just no terrible heinous damage, but just like annoying pranks that we would do. We'd block off streets and throughout Toronto with bags of leaves and kind of sit there behind us, watch cars nap, figure out what to do with these streets we blocked off. Like nothing terrible, just frustration and annoyance, and like maybe some repairs to do afterward, but like no damage to people's property per se, but just annoyance and frustration to people.
Okay. So if you won $100 million today, how would you spend it?
Wow, it's really interesting questions. If I won 100 million, I would spend it. The somehow reforming or contributing to a better physical education in our Canadian system. $100 million wouldn't go that far, but to really help make sure that that physical activity and physical education is put in its appropriate place in our development of our youth.
So you would not build a bigger and better training facility for yourself?
No, you don't need all this stuff. Like the bells, it's fun. I would figure out how to do that with limited. Like if I had that much money to, like, I could make a dent in something with that, like a social good. Yeah, the money to build a gym, in comparison to what I think we could do with that in a social setting, that's where it should be going. I would maybe pay off the rest of our student debts, but that would be maybe the first to make all our personal debts are done, and then maybe the rest of it, which is a lot of $999 million. Still lots of money to go in there.
Well, that's wonderful. Lastly, what's the most important thing you have learned in your life?
Everyone has a very important story that deserves to be heard and listened to.
Yes.
And that's, if we approach everyone with that baseline that they have got something important to tell or to share or to learn from, that's the most important thing. Curiosity. Like just approach everything with some curiosity.
I think one of the quotes that you have in your newsletter is, which I really like, it's by Gabrielle Giffords. I don't know who that is. Do you remember? It says, mile by mile, it's a trial. Yard by yard, it's hard. But inch by inch, it's a cinch.
Yeah. I couldn't find the original Japanese quote that my friend shared with me when I was in Japan. It was like Sakoshi Jutsu, I think, but I couldn't remember how to spell it. But it's like little by little is basically the nature of the quote. And that was the comparable. Yeah.
It's good. I like
it. It's simple and
good. Well, thank you for joining us, Scotty. This was really interesting, fascinating. I wish you continued success in your work, which is very important. I'm sure you're doing a great deal of good to a lot of people, and I hope you can continue. You and your wife, you both seem to be very interested in that. Where can people learn more about you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so Tate Body Sciences, TATE, bodysciences.com is the website. And then same Twitter. I'm not on Twitter very much, but same Instagram handle. It's I have fun on that Instagram handle. So don't expect any really dramatically important stuff there. It's more just me having fun with movement, trying to keep the fun alive. But the newsletter, I think we're trying to share some more kind of deeper dives into material. You can get on that through the website. There'll be a little pop-up to sign up for that newsletter. That's where I'm trying to spend more of my time, is do some deep dives. My clients give me so many interesting insights and so many great stories, and I've been keeping it to myself for too long. So I'm trying to go back through and just share some of that knowledge and curiosity that they've kindled in me, and find a way to make it valuable for people. So I think that's the best place to track me down and see what's going on.
Yes. So the name again is Scott Tate, and if you enjoyed this as much as I did, please show Scott Tate your appreciation and share this podcast with a friend or colleague. My guest next week will be Professor Nicholas Rouleau from the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, and we shall discuss the scientific evidence for the survival of consciousness after permanent bodily death. Please tune in. Thank you, Scotty, again, and until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you.